All right, back with another tier list here. Hey, I did these during the regular season every week. I did my power rankings tier list, but in the off season, if anything, I just make more tier lists at this point because I gotta come up with topics. But I think this could be a fun one. So this is gonna be how each team should feel after their 2024 season. Two of these teams, their season hasn't ended, but obviously they're going to feel pretty good about it, so we'll include those in this list. 5 categories are over the moon, great season, good but kind of disappointing, then just disappointing, and finally, I want to die, RD5 tiers. Let's get into it. The Titans are an interesting one. What do you consider this? Because on one hand, it was very bad. They were the worst team in football. On the other hand, I guess they they got the first overall pick, so you can't be into I want to die tier. And I think if you're gonna have a bad year, you want to completely suck, so you at least get the first overall pick. So I think I'll put them in good but kind of disappointing tier, right? I mean, I think that definitely there's the disappointment of not seeing your team do well. One, there was maybe some hype, maybe Will Levis could have done something. Didn't work out, but yeah, you got the first overall pick, so I'll bump you up a couple tiers for that. The Dolphins, can't put them into I want to die tier, although I do believe that's where the meme originated, the I want to die meme. I'm going to put them in disappointing, though. Again, it's another one of these same old, same old. The good news is there are pieces that you like on this team. Jalen Waddle's great. I like Tua as a player. There's a lot of good here, but definitely an underwhelming season. Not as bad as the Jets, though, who are definitely in the I want to die tier. I mean, they had, again, Super Bowl aspirations here. Also, sorry if the screen gets a little bit weird. That's just the advertisement on the website I make this tier list on. But yeah, I mean, what a disaster, right? You thought Aaron Rodgers could get you over the hump. Last year, they were okay with a, horrible quarterback situation. Maybe not great, or maybe okay is too nice of a word, but they weren't a disaster. This year they were a disaster, and they had the team that they wanted, which is just a bummer, and they've kicked the can down the road to build this team, so they might be in a tough spot for a bit, and they didn't even end up with a great pick out of it. They got the 7th overall pick, so yeah. I mean, they might run it back with Aaron Rodgers. We'll see how it goes, but for right now, you got to be in the I want to die tier. The Bengals, I think, have to also be in the disappointing tier. Again, the good news is you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase. For now, you have T. Higgins. We'll see what happens there, but no doubt about it. I mean, this is any year that you're not winning Super Bowls or contending for Super Bowls with your superstar quarterback, it's disappointing, but especially when you're not even making the playoffs. I mean, that's just a mess. You could argue they should be in the I want to die, but you can't be in that with a quarterback of Burrow's caliber. You just can't. The Browns, yeah, I'll put the Browns in I want to die. I know they ended up with the number 2 overall pick, so maybe it's unfair. Like the Titans, they should have that. But no, I'm going to keep them in the I want to die tier because they made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. There were thoughts that they could make the playoffs again. I think I picked them to make the playoffs, and it wasn't like a crazy hot take. It was like, oh yeah, I guess I could. I think a lot of people were maybe having them as the 8th or 9th team in the AFC that year. I mean, the Deshaun Watson thing, he's just not good, and you're gonna have to pay him for a while, so that's not an ideal situation. You do have the draft pick that could save you. We saw what Washington can do with a number 2 overall pick. We'll see if they can do the same. The Jacksonville Jaguars had another tough one. I mean, you did see some good things. I think Trayvon Walker has continued to develop into a pretty solid player. Brian Thomas Jr. was really good as a rookie, so there was that. Trevor Lawrence did not take a step forward like you wanted. Again, the situation around him is absolutely rough, but still, you would have loved to see things get better. I don't know. Can you put him in the I want to die tier as well? Part of what I'm thinking, too, is okay, the I want to die tier means expectations to now. It's not just where I think you're at as a franchise, so maybe it wasn't the best worded tier. Okay, I've actually changed the name of the tier. After that, I want to die. So after that season, now I want to die. So saying it's that way, I think Jaguars fans were already disappointed, but even though they were disappointed, their disappointment got even worse this year. So yeah, not ideal there. The Detroit Lions, I think you have to put it into good but kind of disappointing tier. Also, I didn't realize how many of these are in bad tiers. Hopefully, there'll be some better ones. This good but kind of disappointed disappointing has to feel correct, right? Because on one hand, you got the 1 seed, you won the division, there was a lot of fun in this season. The game against the Vikings was great, but obviously going 1 and done in the playoffs was just a disappointment. They were favorites to win the NFC basically all year, and to not have that happen, gotta leave a bitter taste in your mouth. But you still did win all those games. This wasn't a disaster, and unlike some of these other teams that just like didn't meet their expectations, the Lions just got injured. So it's not like they're like, oh, well, we're far away, but you don't know how many years you got left is kind of the thing. So Minnesota Vikings are next, which, I mean, this has to be great season, right? Like, this was going into the year, many people thought the Vikings could be contending for the first overall pick. Instead, the playoffs didn't go as you wanted. Sam Darnold struggled towards the end, but in a way that helps you, because you're not in this weird, do we pay him, do we not pay him situation. You, at least if you do pay him, the contract shouldn't be crazy. And it shows just what you can do. It shows what Brian Flores can do. As of recording this video, the Saints still haven't hired a head coach, but I'm assuming they're not going with Flores. I mean, you keep him for another year, which is good. Really good coaching staff, a lot of talent, and hopefully your offensive line gets healthy next year. The Buccaneers, I can't quite put them in great season. I'm going to say good, but kind of disappointing. Another team where the playoffs didn't go as they wanted, and you lose Chris Godwin for the year. That's going to hurt. So that's kind of the disappointing side of things. And the defense just didn't play well this year. But the good thing is, I mean, if you think about it, last year this was a team that was a playoff team, but they were 9-8 in the worst division. This year, I kind of felt like they actually felt like a playoff caliber team. The past 2 years, they were winning because they were in the NFC South. This year, like, they felt like at least a top 7 team in the NFC, even if they were, I don't know how much higher than that they were. But yeah, disappointing because of the playoff loss that they could have won. The 49ers, I mean, yeah, this is definitely disappointing. I mean, this is a team that went from a play away from the Super Bowl, a 4th down stop away from the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. The Chiefs convert, win the game in overtime. Had they gotten that stop, the game would have been over. That close. Now, injuries were a huge part of it, no doubt about it. I don't think you should count the 49ers just completely out just yet. But again, now there's the questions of, how good is Brock Purdy? All that stuff has started to become questions. So yeah, that's where you have that. Again, didn't realize this is such a negative list, but it kind of has to be, I guess. I mean, only 2 teams can go to the Super Bowl. Only 1 can win it. The Falcons, I think, they're kind of in between good but kind of disappointing and disappointing. I guess I'll keep them in the disappointing tier because there were some good things. I do think that we saw Drake London and Bijan Robinson look better with an actual offensive coordinator, right? Which is what we wanted to see. Kyle Pitts is very up and down. But obviously, and you know what? No, I changed my mind. I'm going to bump them up to good but kind of disappointing. The disappointing thing is the Kirk Cousins thing just completely blew up, right? Did not work. It worked for a bit and then just, got so bad, they essentially had to pull the cord and hope that something worked out. Michael Penix looked really good, though, I thought. And that's why, if anything, you can almost bump it up to great season because of how good he looked. Only a couple of games, but that's the good side of things. Kind of disappointing because they were the Vegas favorites to win the division. They don't make the playoffs. That's the kind of disappointing part. But the good part is, it seems like pumping all these resources into the quarterback position, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it does seem like it got you a quarterback, so we'll see how it goes. The Baltimore Ravens, it's interesting because obviously there is the kind of disappointing aspect. They lost in the playoffs yet again. They once again kind of, I think, made too many mistakes on offense with the 3 turnovers that kind of sunk them, even though they did play well outside of that. They still showed they're the Ravens. The Derrick Henry move worked, right? So, that's good, and you have him for next year. So, I'm going to keep them in good, but kind of disappointing. Again, they were one of 8 teams. I can't crush them that much. But, like I said, when you have someone like Lamar Jackson and you're not winning Super Bowls or even getting the conference championships in this case, it's going to leave a sour taste in your mouth. So, that's the disappointing part. The Bears, the Bears, this was a disaster of a year. I think that, can I really put them in the bottom tier? Right now I'm thinking disappointing. Feels like it's the move just because, it's the Bears and it's kind of what happens. But people were predicting this team to make the playoffs. That was happening preseason. The receiving core additions didn't hit the way they wanted. The offensive line was not what they wanted, and Caleb Williams was not what they wanted going into it. And on top of it, the guy they drafted right after, or the guy that got drafted right after, Jaden Daniels, looks amazing. Listen, no one in their right mind would have drafted Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams. I didn't see that take anywhere. I'm sure somebody had it, but very few people were saying that heading into the draft. In fact, more people were surprised Daniels went at 2 instead of falling to 3. So it's easy to say it in hindsight, but this is a disappointing year. The Bears fans thought they were going to get more than this. The good news is they've won the offseason again with Ben Johnson. We'll see how it works. The Cowboys, who I just think that, I don't get the whole Cowboys thing. I don't get why every year people act like they're going to win the Super Bowl when they really haven't even been close in my lifetime. I don't know. After that, I want to die. I just think it's a bad year. Prescott got hurt. It's tough, right? There's all the drama. You lose your head coach and hire him with sort of a kind of a career journeyman, assistant guy. I don't know. This feels tough. I think it's just, you feel aimless, I think, if you're a Cowboys fan. There's worse franchises to be, right? You compare them to the Browns and the Jets, you're like, oh, I'd much rather be the Cowboys. But it's just like, what are we doing here? What is the path forward? I think would be the frustration if I'm a Cowboys fan. So, yeah, that's where I'll go with that. The Texans, I don't know, because they're a tough one, actually, because they didn't have a great regular season, and I think if it was just after the regular season, they'd easily be in one of the bottom 2 tiers. But then they had really good playoffs where they really kind of crushed the Chargers and played the Chiefs pretty tough, I thought, and kind of showed that they do have maybe a little bit of a tendency to rise to the occasion, and there is something to that. So I still think the fact that they didn't take the next step is disappointing, but they still showed that they're a capable team and can move forward, so I'll still put them in the middle tier here. The Indianapolis Colts are next up on this list, who, going into the year, I think there was I think they kind of almost met expectations in some ways, to be honest. I don't think they were expected to be great. They did kind of hang around in the playoff contention a bit. I think I'm still going to put them in the disappointing tier due to the lack of development when it comes to Anthony Richardson, right? Who showed some flashes, but did get benched for a 40-year-old Joe Flacco at one point this season. I don't know if he's someone you feel like you can win with if you're the Indianapolis Colts. Certainly not at this point. So, it would have been a great season had they gotten some more development out of him. Don't know if that happened. The Rams are another team where I kind of feel like they have to be also in the great season tier. This is a team that was not expected to, they weren't expected to be horrible or anything like that, but I think they really surprised a lot of people, especially with how the season started. They were so injured when things started, and just how well they did with the draft, which they draft well pretty much every year, but especially this year with really the Jared Verse pick, seems like they have a franchise edge rusher for a decade plus to come. So because of that, along with some of the other stuff, Stafford's still playing at a high level as of right now. Great season. And for the other team in LA, the Chargers, I think I'm right there. Great season, right? This team was not supposed to be great at all heading into the year. I was a little bit higher on them, if I remember correctly, just because of Jim Harbaugh can make some stuff happen, but also this roster's going to struggle. Not enough defensive pieces. Turns out they had too many defensive pieces. The defense was great this season. Still need some receivers. That was the personnel issue they couldn't overcome, but as a whole, they're moving in the right direction. So yeah, great season for them. You then have the Las Vegas Raiders, who, I guess you have to put them in the disappointing tier just because okay, none of their quarterbacks worked out. The head coach hired didn't work out. I don't know what we were expecting though from the Raiders. It was a year that wasn't supposed to, I guess it's disappointing because they couldn't even get a top pick, I suppose. But what were we expecting? It's what it is. So the Commanders, I think we have to finally put a team in the over the moon category. I know they didn't win the Super Bowl, but getting a franchise quarterback, and not just a franchise quarterback, but a guy who looks like he could be an MVP level quarterback when it's all said and done, I mean, that would be put me over the moon if I am a Commanders fan. The fact that they could, at least for the next 3 years when he's on his rookie deal, be championship contenders. They made the conference championship after picking second overall. That's obviously like top tier. You got to be thrilled if you're a fan of that team. The Chiefs, again, I mean, how do you not over the moon? You're in the Super Bowl. Even if you lose the Super Bowl, like, it's a great run. You went to 3 straight and won 2 of them. But obviously they want to win. They want to win that third. How crazy would it be if you could almost argue they shouldn't be in the top tier if they lose in the Super Bowl because of how high their expectations are. And then I guess while we're talking about it, I'll skip ahead to the Eagles, who are, again, obviously going to be kind of same thing. You're in the Super Bowl. How can you not be over the moon? The Saquon Barkley move worked. Feels kind of obvious there. The Saints, I mean, what do you do with the Saints? Again, it feels like they're another one of these teams who just kind of caught in no man's land of they're not quite bad enough to get a top pick, even though they went 5-12. That still has them picking at 9, which is kind of crazy. So you don't get the top pick. There's clearly roster issues. They don't have a ton of cap space to work with because they never do. Derek Carr keeps getting hurt. So, I don't know. I don't see why this shouldn't be bottom tier. If you're a Saints fan, you got to be frustrated, right? Again, what are we doing here? They did finally trade Lattimore, so maybe that's a sign they're finally going to, rebuild. But that's not a great situation either. So, yeah, especially with how good they looked the first couple of weeks. What a disappointment for Saints fans. The Giants also have to be in the after that I want to die tier, right? I mean, first off, every player that leaves them just looks awesome, right? Xavier McKinney was awesome. Obviously, Saquon Barkley was awesome. That's not ideal if you're a Giants fan. And on top of this, even Leonard Williams was great this year. On top of this, they end up winning a meaningless game. Drew Lock goes off in a meaningless game that now against the Colts, who the Colts needed that game to try and stay in playoff contention. And because of that, you're now in a situation where you don't get to pick first overall or second overall in a draft class where many feel as though there's only 2 top quarterbacks. Maybe they'll get one anyway, and it'll all work out. Who knows? Still a lot of time until draft season, but as of right now, it's a tough stretch where if you're going to get a quarterback, it's probably going to be either you trade up a lot or it's going to be a quarterback that gets drafted after a positional player, and usually those aren't quite as good as the quarterbacks that go before the best positional players. Next up is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. I can't... they made the playoffs, right? Can I put you lower than playoffs or lower than the middle tier if you make the playoffs? Maybe, but for now, this is where I'm going to have them. Again, it wasn't a great... They have a similar issue to the Cowboys where it's what are we doing here? What's the move forward? At least for the Steelers, they made the playoffs and they didn't, they still have a great head coach and they didn't get rid of their head coach for someone who I don't fully understand. But again, who knows? Head coaching hires are weird. But I was probably too mean on the Cowboys. But whatever. We're past that now. They kind of have the aimlessness, and that's the disappointing thing. The good stuff is again, they made the playoffs, and for a stretch, looked like they were more than just a playoff team. They just need to figure out the quarterback stuff. I don't know if they get Sam Darnold or what, but that's kind of the issue. The Denver Broncos are next on this list, who, I'm in between over the moon and great season. I guess I'll go great season, similar to the Chargers, a team that wasn't expected to do much, but you really saw that the great coach was able to turn them around. They also got a quarterback, too, so it's kind of hard to not put them in over the moon, but I'll keep it at great season for now. So far, I think having the 3 over the moon teams beat the 2 Super Bowl, players, and then the team that got Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix was really good too, though. Some thought he was better. Some were arguing him for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think I'm just really high on Daniels, but Bo Nix was great. Sean Payton's great. This is an awesome season if you're a Denver Broncos fan. The Packers did not have an awesome season. Again, I don't know. Some people really like Jordan Love. I don't fully see it. There are games when he looks awesome, but I feel like he's just so inconsistent that's the frustration I have. And again, it feels like they're stagnant right now. They've paid Jordan Love this money. How do you get that much better is going to be the question. I like their head coach a lot. So, again, you made the playoffs. I'll put you into good, but kind of disappointing because, you're not moving forward. You're staying stagnant right now. The Panthers, honestly, didn't think I'd be doing this. Great season. Right? Bryce Young seems to be fixed to some degree. How much is he fixed? I don't know. but he did legitimately look really good down the stretch. He had some really good games. They still are picking 8th, so they'll still get more help for him in theory. They have a ton of cap space. They got to figure out a way to help out this roster. They got to do that. But Dave Canales seems to have a tendency to turn quarterbacks around. He's done this, Geno Smith with the Seahawks, Baker Mayfield with the Bucks, and now Bryce Young with the Panthers. So that hire seemingly worked. So yeah, who would have thought? Carolina Panthers. The Cardinals, I think I'm going to also keep them in good but kind of disappointing. Again, busy tier as it turns out. The thing about Arizona and why it's almost like easier to want to put them in the a little bit lower on this list, because they started off so strong and it was like, oh, what's happening here? Like, I think the Cardinals like previously were not a great team, right? Then all of a sudden it looks like, okay, are they going to make the jump and be a playoff team? And the answer was no. They didn't take 2 steps forward. They only took 1 step forward. And so it was a disappointment that they didn't take the 2nd step forward, but this was still as a whole a good season. So that's why it's kind of disappointing and it can't be a great season, but as a whole, feels like they're moving in the right direction. So, they're getting more talent around Kyler Murray, which is what they needed. So I have that there. The Buffalo Bills, who again made the conference championship. Every other team that made the conference championship, I put in the over the moon category. I can't even think about that with the Bills, and I can't even think about them in great season. The Buffalo Bills, if they lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs, there's some disappointment. It's the conference championship. I'll put them in the middle tier because yes, they still had a really good season. They've shown that they can be competitive with Kansas City. This game came down to the wire. Many people feel like it came down to a 4th down call. I don't think so. I think the Chiefs were better, but it could have gone either way, right? It was a close game. Nonetheless, they're right there. It's just tough. I mean, I gotta keep them in this tier, right? I can't put them any higher. I should have maybe found ways to stretch this out a little bit more. I didn't expect half the league to be in one tier, but nonetheless, the Seattle Seahawks, again, I think you kind of got to go here as well, similar to like the Pittsburgh Steelers to some degree of like, okay, you're doing all right, like, and they did have a new head coach, and I think that's why I'm like, you could still be on the upswing. If it's another season next year of 8-9, no playoffs, I'm going to bump them down a tier. I'll give them 1 extra year just because new head coach. That takes time. And they were right there. I mean, if it wasn't for the Rams getting hot at the end of the season, like the Seahawks definitely had a chance to make the playoffs when they swept the Cardinals. I was like, okay, that's it. Seahawks are in. And then the Rams got just hotter at the right time. But yeah, so for Seattle, got to make sure you start stronger this time. Then the Patriots, I don't know. What are the Patriots? Okay, the good news is, I think Drake May did show some flashes. The bad news is, the situation was so bad, you couldn't even really evaluate him that much, and everything else seemingly stinks. You got Mike Vrabel, though, so I don't know. I think I'm going to keep him in disappointing. I think that feels fair for me. Like, too much else went wrong. At least your young quarterback doesn't look like a bust or anything like that. That's good to see. But yeah, we'll see how the rest goes. But yeah, those are my tier rankings for all of this. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.